The last of the 4 commitments that we ask all West Maniacs to make to each other and to ourselves is that we would support the testimony of our church by attending faithfully, by living a godly life, and by giving generously. Now, if you look at the New Testament, there's this group of people called the followers of the way, or the Jesus followers. And they were, what we would call them is the early church. And they were an amazing group of people. And they had a pattern of behavior that we have tried to model our church after. Most churches do. And an incredible pattern of behavior. First of all was their worship. They would gather together once a week as a large group, sometimes in catacombs, sometimes down by the oak tree, but most of the times when things were okay, they would gather in a synagogue together. All of them, the whole church, gathered together, and they would follow the old Jewish model for worship. They would sing songs together, and then somebody would read the scripture and teach from the scripture. And this is a pattern that we see repeated over and over in every little city where Jesus followers went and lived. They would gather for big time worship. Everybody would gather together, big church, everybody was there, and they would worship. And then when that was over, they would split up and they would go to homes. Groups of big worshipers would go to smaller groups in homes, and they would eat a meal together. They would fellowship. They would talk about what they learned in church, and they would take communion together. They would grow together as a group. And this is what we've tried to model our church after. We have a worship service on Sunday where we hope you'll come and gather and worship and sing and learn from the scriptures, and then leave and then go find a smaller group of people where you can do life together and eat a meal together and fellowship. They're 2 important things. And really there are so many great benefits to you as a human being when you do those things. The benefits are too long to list, but things like depression is decreased, and joy is increased, and happiness is increased. And you even have a better outlook on life when you gather together to worship with other people. So it's important that we gather together faithfully whenever possible to worship together. There's something very, very powerful about doing that. The second thing is that we would learn to live a godly life. And what I mean by that is we would learn to be like Jesus. If you want to have a godly life, you just do what the Son of God did. You treat people the way he treated them. You love the way he loved. You speak the way he spoke. You always ask that question, what would Jesus do in this situation? When you begin to do that, you begin to live a godly life, and you start to look like Jesus and sound like Jesus and talk like Jesus. And the third thing that the early church was really good at doing was being generous. And I say this all the time, our church is the most generous church I've ever served in, and it's absolutely true. That early church would give at the drop of a hat. They would give to anyone who had a need. In fact, that's one of the phrases used about them, that they would give to anyone and everyone who had a need. And so it takes generosity for a group of church people to minister to their community, to minister to the world, to pay the light bills and do all the things that must be done. It takes generosity, and so I thank you for being a generous church, but it's something that has to just be part of our daily discipline. So supporting the testimony of our church is really about your daily routine. It's about daily studying the scriptures to see who Jesus was, and daily praying so that you can become more like him, and just learning what it means to worship and letting your generosity flow from all of those things as you get encouraged and you get loved, and as you share love and you just become more like Jesus. If anybody knew how to give, it was Jesus. He gave his life. So I want to thank you for watching these 4 videos as we've kind of steered away from Devos and talked about some commitments, but I think they're important. And so I thank you for taking the time to watch these. We are going to take a break from Devos next week for Thanksgiving, but we'll be back right after that. Thank you for watching these videos. We really do appreciate it. We love you guys and hope you have a great day.